Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Nest. My name is Misfit, and I'm excited to bring you another episode here. We are joined today by Cesian and Acronator, and tonight we will be going over this past week of matches and, looking forward to the future of the tournament, seeing what we've got in our standings and for our upcoming matches. So, yeah, I'm really excited to get this one underway. And without further ado, we can throw it on over to our guests. I'd like to give you both a chance to introduce yourselves and tell us who you are. So we'll start off with you, Cesian. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So I'm a former tier 3 player and coach. I play off tank, and recently I have been more in the coaching slash analysis slash casting area. Been trying to get more into casting and broadcast and stuff like that. Something I've been very interested in, and also trying to keep up with analysis of games. Just trying to make sure that I like to make sure that a lot of people try to learn the best things about the game instead of just kind of spewing what they see people say on Twitter. But
Instead of
yeah,
watching Stylosa videos.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's great. I will throw it over to you now, Acronator. I know you've done a bit of work for casting, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, sure. So I am a admin and the founding production head for League Zero, another decent sized community league. I've been doing that for a little over 2 years now, and outside of that, I've been casting pretty much everywhere I can find. Uh, Coached a few teams here and there, nothing too high up in the path to pro. Mostly my accolades are League Zero and casting.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Both very, very noble endeavors. But yeah, no, we'll get right into the nitty gritty, into the business of this week. We had a lot of good games this week, a couple of stomps, but we'll talk about those as we get into here. We'll start off with our first game, which is going to be Hyperion versus Paradise Tempest, which was a not at the closest of games. Paradise Tempest able to take this one 3-0 over Hyperion, who I believe I predicted they would win this. So a little bit of surprising there. But yeah, no, let's talk about this one a little bit. We'll start off with you, Season. What did you think of this one?
So I think Paradise Tempest, in my opinion, from what I've seen, seems to be, in my opinion, the strongest team that we have right now in the tournament. One thing that I always try to look at when looking at I've coached many different ranks, ranging from like plat to even like trials level contenders. So it's seeing like what kinds of like paths to victory there are for different ranks, and at this rank around like plat diamond, a lot of the times you're looking at trying to just play to your strengths, and like I don't judge comps too much based on meta at this rank because a lot of stuff is just kind of playing to your strengths. And that's definitely something where I saw some differences here between Hyperion and Paradise Tempest, where um, both teams liking to play the pharmacy a lot, which is seeing some play. But I think the difference between the way Paradise Tempest and Hyperion was playing was the way they constructed the rest of their comp was it was a little bit more seemed like there was a little bit more thought behind it. One thing that I'm very critical about with lower ranked teams is whether or not they actually think about which heroes they're pairing together or not. So, like, you see Hyperion a lot of the time is running Ryan Zarya, two tanks with fairly low range, low mobility, that really they need a Lucio's speed boost to really get in and be able to actually get value without getting spammed out. But seeing them pair that with a pharmacy and playing like Mercy Bap, it feels like very conflicting play styles. Whereas Paradise Tempest, this is on Oasis, they were running the Winston Diva, which Winston Diva and the Tracer, which gives you the ability to follow up onto the fire damage anyway. So there's just like a little bit more thought process going behind Paradise Tempest comp, and that's kind of what you want to look for in these lower ranked teams, where you're going to be playing a lot of comfort picks, and yeah, you're not really conforming strictly to the meta. But I think it's still very important that your comfort picks synergize well with each other, and that you're not playing two different styles. You're not playing heroes that are going to step on each other's toes trying to accomplish different things. So I think just the way that Paradise Tempest was playing this entire match, a lot of their comps even though they aren't considered like the meta comp. So like in high ranks, you're seeing a lot of brawl, but also like seeing like kind of reverting back to the double bubble, and then also that ball Sigma comp with the Briggs N from like Grand Finals patch. We're seeing like teams, especially in Asia, go back to that. So it's like it's definitely we're not seeing those kinds of comps here. I think the closest thing we'll see is going to be the Rush. A lot of teams running the Ryan Diva and the May McCree. I think it'll be a recurring trend throughout the whole recap section, where a lot of teams just like to, and it's definitely something that lower ranks like playing Ryan a lot anyway. I'm not quite sure why that is. I think it's just it's very hard to punish Ryan if you're not playing the game at like a super high level. I think that's part of it, is that a lot of mistakes aren't getting punished. But regardless, Paradise Tempest, it was very easy victory. I think they basically full held. Like, actually, no, it was one of the other matches. But this one, like the scoreline does look a little
Pretty
bit
convincing.
Yeah, it's pretty convincing. It's not as close as you would expect, considering that you were coming in here looking at Hyperion taking this away. But
well, yeah, no, and I can cover that a little bit. I mean, Hyperion, you mentioned the comps they were running. Hyperion was known a lot in their time in 3.5 for being a team that like relied pretty heavily on comfort picks. They were mechanically more skilled than the majority of the minors division in 3.5, and so a lot of times they just went with characters they were good at, and they were able to outskill their counterparts hard enough in order to win most of their games. And we're kind of seeing that not work as well for them here. The King, very well known for his Pharah and Junkrat, can play other things. I would contend that he's not as good at his other things. He is exceptional at the Pharah, especially for a player at the CeeLo. Has a lot of very, very creative ways that he uses it. Very, very good at finding value with the ultimate. But I think you said it yourself, is like their comps just aren't working very well together. There's not a lot of thought behind them. You can just feel that it's comfort picks, and clearly not working for them in this game. So yeah, we will throw it over to you now, Akron. Do you got any thoughts on this game?
I unfortunately didn't get to catch the entire game. I believe a game I was casting had ended earlier than this one, or possibly, I don't know. Either way, I agree with a lot of what Cesian said, where like, especially at this rank, at like the community level, the compositions don't necessarily matter. It's more just like, as long as you're filling certain niches, comp doesn't really matter until you get to like a contenders trials level. Like, you'll see top level open division teams basically troll their comps and get almost 2 trials. So like,
Yeah.
it really requires that upper level of play that the semi-pro scene has to really force meta comps. Honestly, I prior to this match, I would have expected Paradise Tempest to 3-0, just because I casted their game in week 1. I forget against who, but that was a 3-0 as well. And after the game, when the interview came up, we asked whoever we were interviewing, like, what did you do to prep for this game? And they said they scrimmed 5 times a week, which is certifiably insane. That's so much time into just practicing.
Let's pray for their sanity. Let's have a moment of silence.
And I've really only ever seen one other team do that in like the community level, and that team was in League Zero. They ended up going on to like completely dominate the upper division of GGNA and just completely like clean sweep everything all the way through the grand final. So I'm not too shocked that another team that's scrimming every single day of the regular week is probably just going to clean sweep the entire season, unless some crazy upset happens later on in the Owlet Season 4.
Well, yeah, that's actually a nice little tidbit of information, if I do say so myself. It gives us a little bit of a clue into their work ethic and mindset. If they're scrimming 5 times a week, that's definitely more than most teams are at community tournament levels. Once you get up into GM and contenders, I would still, I don't even think contenders teams scrim 5 days a week. Do they?
No, they do. They absolutely do.
Oh, they do. They do.
Once you get to contenders, it's a lot more of like you scrim like 2 to 3 blocks a day.
Yeah, it's not necessarily every single day.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
I should have said contenders trials. That's what I meant more than contenders.
But even in like top OD, or at least when I was in top OD, it's very much you try to get the most out of your time by doing double blocks or triple blocks,
Yeah.
having your VOD
Yeah.
reviews like before or after your scrim blocks. Like one thing I've had issues with in the past coaching some teams is obviously schedules. Scheduling can be difficult, especially if you're not looking to go pro. If you're just looking to do this for fun as a hobby, you're probably gonna have commitments, either a job or you have you have school, and that just makes it a little bit more difficult to actually scrim that often. But a lot of these teams that scrim 5 days a week, generally it's only um, one block a day, which ends up being less than I think a lot of the top OD trials teams are scrimming, because even though they may not scrim every day, and some of them actually do probably scrim every day, it's more like it's double blocks, triple blocks. Like you'll have some days where they'll start at 4 EST and go until 10 EST. And then also it's really important, the VOD reviews as well. It's something that I've always been very vocal about is scrims. Like playing scrims only gets you so far. What really helps you improve as a team is how much you VOD review, both as a team and individually. Because if you just roll up to scrims, you know, especially like in NA, like there's the NA scrims bingo. You show up to scrims 5 minutes late, sit down, crank out 5 maps, and then log off right after. Like you're not really putting a whole lot of effort into actually improving, and that's why it's really important to VOD review as well, making sure that you're actually having your practice focused. And that's something I think a lot of lower ranked teams can definitely benefit from, because I know a lot of lower ranked teams don't do this, where even if you get a coach that's like 1 or 2 ranks higher than you, it could still help a lot to VOD review with them. But yeah, it's just I definitely think that these two teams, Hyperion, just looking at their record, they 3-0'd Phoenix in the previous week. I think Hyperion's very solidly middle of the pack right now, but I think definitely Paradise Tempest looking to be very strong. So I don't think them losing. I don't think Hyperion losing to them here is too telling of like a doomsday scenario yet. So, but it definitely was still very convincing here.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think it is time for us to move on to our next game of the week, which was Danger Close Red versus Phoenix. Danger Close, obviously taking this one. I shouldn't say obviously. It took this one 3-1 over Phoenix, and what was actually not a completely a stomp of the series. It was fairly the scoreline it was fairly even. Phoenix taking that first map, and then of course dropping the 3 after it. I mentioned this last week, but Danger Close Red is a kind of a remake, or has some of the same members that old Odyssey Esports from the minors division of 3.5 had. They were a solid team, and Danger Close Red has also been pretty solid so far, now being up 2-0 in their record. So yeah, let's get some thoughts on this game. Acronator, you want to start us off here?
Sure. So I'm not too familiar with Danger Close Red in particular, but I believe I caught a VOD of Phoenix, and they looked honestly pretty solid. Maybe not like absolute top tier, but I could see them being like middle of the pack, maybe upper middle of the pack if they get some of their stuff together. So seeing the scoreline is kind of surprising. I guess more so just because I'm not familiar with their opponents. So I guess that speaks a little bit more to Danger Close Red. Currently they're undefeated in the standings. Looks like pretty decent map differential as well. So I'm gonna have to pay a little bit closer attention to them in particular, see what they can pull out against some tougher opponents.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Susan, you got anything
Yeah.
to add?
Unfortunately, I don't think we have a VOD for this match, so I wasn't able to actually look over it. I didn't see it live, but we do have the scores. So if anything, the scores say from the previous weeks, Phoenix did lose 3-0 to Hyperion, the team we just talked about, that just lost to Paradise Tempest. So just kind of like, I know the commutative property doesn't exactly work very well with teams, because there's always like differences of styles. Maybe some styles, kind of like a rock paper scissors type scenario, where some styles might work better against some teams but might not work against other teams. So it doesn't exactly mean a whole lot, but if we just kind of like judge the power rankings based off of like what we saw from Hyperion, versus Paradise Tempest. Hyperion definitely, like you said, mechanically good. I think they still have some things they need to work out, like with their team comps, making them a little bit more cohesive. But Phoenix losing 3-0 to Hyperion in the first week, it does kind of like make me think that this team probably either is having a slow start or they're one of our lower teams in the standings based on like skill level. But they did take a map off Danger Close Red, which is, they're undefeated. But at this stage in the tournament, being undefeated could also be a product of strength of schedule as well. That's definitely also something to consider. But I don't really think there's a whole lot to go off of here except for stats. I guess it looks like, for Danger Close Red, we had a lot of numbers coming out from Toxin, over 11k damage per 10, 10k damage per 10. Those are really good numbers, especially in organized. So definitely looks like Toxin carrying the weight here. But on the other side, definitely looks like the damage is a lot lower. So it looks like maybe Phoenix, they came out swinging in the first map, but lost their steam after that one. But even then, like some of the maps are close. Like you have 3-2, 4-3, and then they finally get full held on assault. So honestly, there's not a whole lot to go off here besides just stats. Just simply because I didn't have the VOD, so I wasn't able to check this one. But yeah, I think definitely looking to get some wins here this coming week and the week after, or else they might be in a little bit of a predicament.
All right, fair enough. I got nothing else to add on this one, so let's get back into or I shouldn't say back. Let's get on to the next match. I've had a couple of those today. Words are very hard for the folks of you at home who don't know. Our next game of the week, as Joey pulls it up for us here, is going to be Crusaders versus Rogue Dragons, I should say. I know members of both of these teams, and I thought it was really funny, as I believe one of you pointed out before the broadcast, Crusaders has now been reverse swept 2 weeks in a row, which I'm sure Blatman is very, very excited about. So yeah, we'll start off with you, Season. Why don't you give us the rundown of this one?
Yeah, that honestly feels really bad. Getting reverse swept sucks. Getting reverse swept 2 weeks in a row, I've personally never had that happen to me, luckily. But I would imagine that one of two things happens after that. You either get your butt in gear and you sit down, you say, okay, what do we need to fix? Why are we having trouble closing out these games? And then you come back and you start dominating. You get those 3-0s, you close out that third map or maybe the fourth map. But definitely it does not feel good to get reverse swept. So it could have something to do with comfortability level on like level of comfort on control and escort for sure. See both of those maps full holding, but then the rest is control was close, but the other ones were a little bit lacking. So this is one of the matches that I was definitely looking at where it's like trying to see what kind of like what's causing Crusaders to like slip on these second and third maps. And honestly, I just think sometimes it comes down to obviously map pool, but also like some teams when the other team starts to adapt as well, like adapt to their style. Sometimes adapting back, like adapting to the way the other team adapted, is sometimes where you have issues. But I think both the teams that they lost to, so you have Growlu and then Rogue Dragons, both these teams are looking pretty strong as well. So I wouldn't say it's like looking too bad for them, considering that both the teams they lost to are actually, I need to check the record for Dragons. Oh, Dragons are 1-1. Yeah,
but they lost. I believe they lost a close game to Danger Close Red last week, I believe.
Yeah, so both their teams, like, it's not like they're losing to like other teams that are like struggling to get wins. It's definitely you're losing to some strong teams, so it's not like too you're not worried too much. And they do have a bye next week, so they have a lot of time to prep for their match the next week. So that might be a good breath of fresh air for them.
Yeah, no, I mentioned this before, but my good friend Blattman coaches this team, and I'm sure I will say this. Blattman, he's not a very good loser. He gets fired up when things start going bad, so I'm sure he will inspire the fear of God in these players and make sure they get them back on track. I will say I did get to see some clutch caliber DPS in this game, which I was very excited about. It wasn't very good, but that's why I wanted to see it. It's because it's funny watching him struggle to play the game. Love you, Clutch. But yeah, we'll throw it over to you now, Acronator. Do you see anything in this game you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, as you can see on the graphic, I was the play-by-play caster for this match, and honestly, it was looking like a clean 3-0 for Crusaders at first. They weren't looking like incredible, but they were looking like solid. They're decent, and Rogue Dragons were just very slow to start, and then they started to gain some momentum and adapt. I don't remember exactly what. I think they were switching up their comps a bit. I think I'd have to go back and watch the VOD, but I think they were experimenting with double bubble a bit and like a few other compositions in the first two maps, and then somewhere on the hybrid map they just started to like focus in on one thing, and it really started to work. I don't remember any of the names of the players. They all just meld together in my head. I cast too much, but
It happens.
I do remember Sith in particular just like starting to come alive, especially on the McCree. Towards like Eichenwald in particular, I think. Yeah, I'm just gonna say that was the hybrid map, and they started to come alive and really started to make a difference. And Crusaders were really close at times to making it work, but they definitely looked like they lost momentum, they lost steam, and they could never fully bring it back. And basically from that point onwards, Rogue Dragons just wouldn't stop. They kept their foot on the gas pedal the entire time.
All right then. Yeah, no, Rogue Dragons definitely a better 3-2 than they got last week, being on the winning end this time. I'm sure they're happy about that. We'll have to see how both these teams settle into the league as we get into some more games. But yeah, let's get into our next game, which I believe is going to be Otter Oxide versus JCP. And I believe to no one's great surprise, Otter Oxide took this one pretty convincingly. The last map there being a little bit close for comfort, but it was a 3-0. I've talked about this before. Otters has the benefit of having a lot of really, really smart coaches on their staff. But one of the weaknesses of that is that you have so many coaches and they're all very talkative. They all have their own opinions. VOD reviews can sometimes get very, stagnant in what you talk about. Sometimes you only get through like a team fight in an hour because everyone just needs to talk about something. But they have a lot of really good players there. My old teammate Hawk and now playing tank, but still putting up some insane damage numbers there on Eichenwald. Very, very solid player. He truly can play any character in the game, and I'm not just saying that. I have watched this guy dominate on every single character in the game. He is an extremely talented player, definitely a plus for this team, and I'm excited to see him doing great things, even though he is no longer a teammate of mine. But yeah, we'll start off with you, Acronator. What are your thoughts on this game?
Is Otter Oxide the team that has like almost every single person on their starting lineup as an off-roller? Or is that
No, that's Growlu.
Okay, yeah.
I think there are still a good amount of off rollers on Otters, I believe, though, because they have some players that played back in season 3 that are now back on some different roles. I would have to check their team card though.
Okay, they all just melt together in my head. But I remember casting Otter Oxide at some point in the past couple weeks, and I remember thinking they're very good. Probably, I think right now they're technically number 1 in the standings, or tied with Paradise Tempest.
They're tied with Paradise.
Yeah, I think they're a pretty solid bet for second place thus far. No offense to them, but I just think Paradise Tempest is kind of a league above. But I remember JCP, I believe, were the ones who got swept by Paradise Tempest in week 1. And they didn't look bad. It was just that Paradise Tempest was like so much further ahead of them. And then Otter Oxide, of course, whenever I did cast them, they looked really solid as well. I'm not too shocked about this, especially looking at some of these stats. In particular, like the damage difference between Apri Sepik and Hawk even on Iconol.
Yeah,
Like that's literally
pretty
almost double the
sizable.
damage. I don't know which tanks they were playing based off of this, but probably Zarya if I had to guess, or Sigma.
Aprasepic was playing Ryan, and then Hawk was playing Zarya.
I
Okay.
really want to see the Hawk
Huh.
Ryan before the end of the season. That's just a call out to Otterox. Please put Hawk on Ryan. I don't care if it's in a throwaway match or anything. I need to see him MTD someone. It's just like it's on my bucket list.
Even so, that's still pretty low damage for Orion, so he's probably just getting bullied 24/7 based off of
Yeah.
that, if I had to guess.
Well, and I think definitely one of the aspects, JCP playing Beatrix on a lot of different heroes. One of the seeing him on the Junkrat a lot. So it could be the fact that Aprasepic doesn't really have many opportunities to actually swing. He's kind of just holding shield, holding down an area, kind of. And then also, like you said, though, probably getting bullied a lot. And with those damage numbers that you see with Hawk, having 12k per 10, that is, it's a lot of damage for Zarya player. That means that they didn't die very often. They were getting a lot of damage, like just either from off angles or just being able to push forward with the team. But also, what that could indicate is that the team fights went very long. So it could be, and another thing we're seeing is Candy for Days with 11.4k heals per 10. So just based on those stats, it looks like these fights probably lasted a long time. And that's probably part of the reason why these numbers are so inflated. Like you see like 12k per 10 damage, and then both 11k on both sides for the Baptiste players. So it ends up being like I don't think these teams are actually. I don't think the score was as. I mean, obviously Hawk playing out of his mind, but I think JCP, looking at both of the teams they've played, and both of those teams are the teams that are 6-0 right now in maps. So it doesn't. I think if you're JCP, like you just kind of take that. You're like, well, we played literally the first and second place teams, or tied for first, I guess you could say. So it's kind of like now, like maybe the strength of schedule might smooth out for JCP, so they might be able to bring it back. And like you said, Acronator, they looked decent. Obviously a little bit outclassed, but they definitely still looked like they kind of like they have an identity kind of built around playing around Beatrix is kind of what I was seeing in their match. And I think if they can really lean into that and set up Beatrix for success, they could pick up some maps coming up in the next few weeks.
Well, all right then. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely unfortunate that JCP had to face the top two teams right off the bat. I look forward to seeing what they can do after this week when they get to face some more docile opponents. But let's move right on into our last match of the week, which was Team Growlu versus Volume Zero. This one also being a 3-0, though it was a little bit closer, with both Escort and Hybrid being within 1 point of each other. Team Growlu, though, taking the victory here over Volume Zero's debut. They had the bye week 1, so this was their first showing. Probably not what they wanted to start off with. We had Zim on here last week, and he didn't have too much confidence in them, and it looked like he was right, unfortunately. But, so goes it sometimes. Team Growlu, a very talented team, in my opinion. I know most of these guys very personally, and they're all a bunch of really skilled players. They know the game pretty well. Most of them have experience in like Masters scrims or higher. And, even though they're off rolling right now, that knowledge is still important. They can still identify win conditions, identify issues that can be really important, and they adapt very, very well. And we see that here with them taking their second three, or not, I shouldn't say second, they 3-2 in week 1, but their second victory, I should say. So yeah, we'll start off with you, Cesian. Is there anything you want to talk about here?
Yeah. So like you said, this is something we were talking about before the show. Growlu mostly off rolling, but having that experience, it definitely still goes a long way. Like regardless of if you're playing your main role or not, like it definitely shows like in the comps they're playing and like how they play the comps that they understand. Like even if they're not playing their main role, they understand for the most part what they're supposed to be doing, and their comps are constructed with some sort of like we're actually seeing them play like the ball Sigma, and then like also we saw them pull out the Roadhog Sig, which is Definitely kind of a blast to the past at this point. But it definitely, like their comps are, I think not quite like what you would consider meta, but they're definitely a lot closer than a lot of these teams would be, and they're playing them well. The only thing I'm worried about with Volume Zero is that it kind of seemed to have just one style, and that was the rush. Like we didn't really see them play anything else besides the Ryan Diva, and then occasionally they would switch up their DPS picks, and that's something that's not really, maybe not that concerning for this rank, but it's definitely something where if you have a bunch of players playing, to their strengths, or you have teams playing to their strengths and playing these weird off roles, a lot of teams don't have the experience required to really understand how these like weird kind of niche comps fit into how they play their one comp. So it's just something they'll have to get the hang of. And obviously, we've only seen one match from Volume Zero, and it is one of the 2-0 teams. So it's again not a whole lot to look at. But if we look at their schedule coming up, Danger Close Red, Crusaders, it doesn't look like it's going to get much easier here very soon. So this is probably honestly one of the tougher strengths of schedules I've seen, especially for a team that it seems like they're kind of playing just one style. So they're very one-dimensional, in my opinion.
Well, all right then. Akroner, you had the pleasure of casting this game,
Yeah.
Looks, so why don't you give us the rundown here?
Well, obviously, Team Growlu had a distinct advantage, having a lot of off rollers. And it was one of those rare times where it showed a lot, where you could tell exactly which team had Masters players on Diamond and Plat off rolls. Oh god, I honestly couldn't pick out anyone in particular who was like the single carry on Team Growlu. They were all just doing really well. The thing I noticed more was like with Volume Zero, their tempo is incredibly slow. Like they would push into a choke point and just kind of like stand there and take a whole bunch of poke damage. I remember why at one point was on the Doomfist on I think Eichenwald, and just got every single rollout he wanted, got kills almost every single time. Volume Zero couldn't do anything about it because they were just sitting there waiting to die. So it's one of those games where, especially since I was the color caster there, just sitting there thinking, how am I going to analyze this?
Yeah.
Unfortunate for them.
No, I think Y is actually Alcura. I think he's playing on. He has a DPS count like Y. Is it Y exclamation point with like the wide letters?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Alcura. So he's like a ball one trick. A ball one trick. He's peaked like 3.9 at like a couple seasons ago. He's kind of lost his mojo since then, and I love watching him play DPS because the things he gets away with is honestly it's incredible. I watch this guy do some things sometimes. I'm just like, you should be dead like 5 times over, but for some reason you now have 3 kills and you're still alive. That's why. Why is this happening? Which makes the account very, very well suited for him. And it's been fun watching his DPS endeavors. He's been posting clips to Twitter and whatnot, and it's been very enjoyable. I've been enjoying watching it. But yeah, that just about wraps up our recap for this week. Let's get into our standings here to get the more comprehensive view of how this week went. Starting us off here, we have Joey. These are last week's standings.
Uh-oh.
All right, looks like we're gonna have to do this one ourselves. So, week 2 standings. Tied for first is going to be Otter Oxide and Paradise Tempest, both being 6-0 in the standings. Team Growlu and Danger Close Red both close behind within one map of each other, but they are, of course, 4 and 3 map differential. Do we have the real ones up now? Oh, thank you so much, Joey. I love you so much. Not really. Hyperion now taking our 5 spot. They are now 1-1 with an even map differential. Rogue Dragons are 2. I don't know if this would. I guess this counts as that they're tied. I do find it funny that they've played 4 more maps than a Hyperion, though. That just I like that. Coming in at 7 and 8, or I guess tied for 7th rather, as Los Beefers to be, who I believe have the best name in the entire tournament, and then Volume 0, both getting 0-3. I believe Los Beefers had their bye this week, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, that's correct. So they did not
Yes.
get a chance to play. They will get another chance this next week. And then coming in at 9, we have Crusaders coming off their very embarrassing back-to-back reverse sweeps. And then, of course, finishing us up, we have Phoenix and JCP with only a map going to Phoenix there. Both these teams have played some solid teams, though, so I look forward to seeing how these guys rise up in the rankings once our strength of schedule gets a little bit easier for them. But yeah, that wraps up our standings. We'll get into our Preds now, and I'm very, very excited. We got some very nice games coming up this week. The first of which I want to talk about is going to be Paradise Tempest versus Otter Oxide. I know that's on the bottom of all of our or I should say our predictions list, but it's, I think, the game we need to talk about the most. Both these teams tied for number 1 right now. You guys have both had your opinions that Paradise Tempest is like the best team in the tournament, and that might be true. But I still think Otter Oxide's going to win. And the reason I say that is because Otter Oxide, with all their coaches and all their knowledge, just like Team Growlu, most of the players on this team have experience in Masters or hires, like tournaments or scrims and whatnot, right? So I think that they have the potential to adapt to a team that, while strong, may not have that experience. So yeah, that's my take there. We can discuss this a little bit. We'll start off with you, Acronator. You can justify your prediction.
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed when in week 1 casting Paradise Tempest game is that all of the players played significantly higher than what their actual SR showed. Like, the way they looked and how clean they were playing reminded me a lot more of like legitimately a mid to high Masters team as opposed to anything closer to Diamond. Like, they were just ridiculously clean. They were able to adapt on the fly within their limitations of the compositions they were playing. They played their win conditions almost flawlessly, so I just don't see how they lose a singular map this season. It's nothing against Otter Oxide. Again, I just feel like Paradise Tempest has too many resources in their coaching staff. Their players are too committed to really let anything slip.
Well, all right then. You're more familiar with them than I am, so that's a fair take, I believe. I'll throw it over to you, Cesian. What do you think of that game?
So I, even though I do know a lot of the people working with Otter Oxide, I definitely do still think that at least like the way it looked, and looking at strength of schedule, I think Paradise Tempest has played. I think Hyperion is better than the two teams that Otter Oxide has played. I think it's the fact that both these teams are 6-0 after week 2. I think it's definitely not really going to tell the whole full story. Just kind of like the similar reason why you'd see a team like JCP, where they're 0-6 right now in terms of maps, but they've played obviously the two top teams that we're talking about right now. So it just kind of like one thing that I was looking at was Paradise Tempest's flexibility. I think Otter Oxide seemed very locked into just playing like different kinds of variations of Rush, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's definitely like one of the strong comps right now. But I think that definitely based on like the weaknesses that Otter Oxide showed versus JCP on some of the maps and what Paradise Tempest is showing, like overall, I like Paradise Tempest's comps a lot more. I think they have, they're pulling off all their comps very well. Like every single comp they played, it looks like they're playing extremely well, and being able to play like a bunch of different styles and be able to pull out different things on different maps definitely is going to give you a sort of edge. I think it's just all down to how Paradise Tempest is able to navigate around this rush, and we'll have to see how Otter Oxide plays into these kind of different comps where Paradise Tempest is playing the rush, playing the dive as well, playing some of the double shield as well with like the Ash Torb. It's definitely going to be a test on this coaching staff that you speak so highly of, whether or not they are able to prepare adequately for all these comps that Paradise Tempest might throw out.
Yeah, no, that's fair. The coaches can only do so much scouting or coaching and telling people what to do. It does come down to the players. They are the ones playing. So even if Otters does have the better coaching staff, if one team does have better players, I think that's a more substantial advantage in my opinion. But but yeah, no, I think that's definitely the game to watch this weekend for all you watching right now. Wondering which games you need to turn into this weekend. That's definitely the one you're going to want to look out for. But I think another game that is kind of people might not know about is going to be Hyperion versus Team Growlu. And this one I think is going to be one that everyone should tune in for. It's not necessarily a grudge match as much as it is both these teams kind of like they're sort of like rivals in a way. Both these teams have some not beef again. They just want to beat the other team really really badly. Or at least I know Team Growlu definitely wants to take down Hyperion, and I think personally they will be able to. They have experience at higher divisions. I think they've looked better in the tournament so far than Hyperion has. And again, we talked about Hyperion's issues, the fact they rely a little bit too hard on comfort picks. Going up against a team that's really good at adapting, like Team Growlu, even on their off rolls, I think they should be able to figure out the Kings, usual tomfoolery on the far end, the Junkrat. And I think that they do have the advantage. I think what's going to happen though is I think the exact way the scoreline is going to play out is Team Growlu is going to go up 2-0 and then screw around for a map, and Hyperion's going to be able to edge one out, and then Team Growlu is going to come back with a vengeance and just easily take the fourth map. And I think that's how we're going to see this one play out. I do think Team Growlu is the better team, but I still think it's going to be a fun match to watch because there will be some teabagging thrown around, and there will be some things in match chat here and there, although that will be hidden from our producer. But yeah, no, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this game. You both predicted a different outcome. So we'll start off with you, Akronator. What do you think Hyperion is going to take this one?
I have no clue. From what I've seen of these two teams, they look very close, and I just kind of tossed it up. I could even see it going to a map 5. I could see Team Growlu winning. They're too close, and I haven't seen quite enough of them to really fully analyze them. But I hope and think it'll be a close match.
All right. Season, what about you?
He did.
Season?
Oh, I muted my mic. Unlucky.
Oh, hello. Nice of you to join us.
Yeah, I'm back. Anyway, kind of what you were saying, Misfit, earlier, like leaning more into that is a very adaptable team in Team Growlu. And honestly, I think Team Growlu, regardless of, even though they are listed at number 3 right now with that reverse sweep on Crusaders, I definitely do think they are still very much in the conversation of being like talking about like who's the best or the second best team in this league. I think it's kind of, we're thinking between like Otter Oxide, Team Growlu, and Paradise Tempest, or those are the 3 teams we're looking at. I think that even though Team Growlu is not 6-0, I still think that they are, what they've shown, what I've seen, is definitely very, they're adaptable. Just like, I think they're the most adaptable team out of the big 3. But I think that, like you said, a little bit before the tournament, they're on off rolls. So if they run into a team where they are like a little bit better mechanically on a man-to-man basis, it might look a little shaky, which I think is probably what happened versus Crusaders. So I think that Hyperion definitely. Another thing you were saying, I don't remember if you mentioned this during the broadcast, but you were saying Hyperion is definitely a team where you have a lot of mechanically skilled players. So that could be something where I think Hyperion comes out the gate, wins control, but then Team Growlu come back and win the next 3 matches. I think that control is definitely very much, it kind of favors the team that is very good at the individual level, the people that do very well in like a sprint setting where you're trying to get as much value as you can as quick as possible. And I think that's something where a team with people on their main roles would kind of flourish in. But then also it's just like, I think Team Growlu with that 3-2 versus Crusaders, definitely looking like they could be a team that has a little bit of a slow start, but then again, it's still too early to really tell. But it's definitely, this is also, I think, going to be an interesting one because it's going to be Hyperion trying to prove if because they're kind of sitting at like middle of the pack right now. They need to prove if they're, better than middle of the pack, or they might turn out to be like lower than middle of the pack. So I think it's really on Hyperion to just come out and try to take as many maps as possible and see what they can do.
I think that's fair. I'm definitely excited to see how that one plays out. Unfortunately, I will not be able to cast this weekend because I got finals coming up. But if I could, I would be casting that game because I would be able to provide a lot of fun commentary for those two. But yeah, no, we'll move on to our next game that I think is worth talking about, which is going to be JCP versus RD. Of course, Rogue Dragons having that, I wouldn't say rough start since they're 2-0, but like they've been cutting it a bit close in their score lines, or they're not 2-0, they're 1-1 with 2-3-2s. Excuse me. I'm a very silly man. I don't know if you guys know this by watching my show yet, but I think this one's going to be a pretty solid game. I think Rogue Dragons is going to come out swinging pretty hard here. JCP, we've talked about how they could be a team that is up in that mid tier, and maybe they've just had a hard schedule so far. But I mean, I've got to look at the fact that they don't have a map yet. And they haven't been able to adjust whatsoever to those top teams. Rogue Dragons is a team that I think could be not a top team, but like in that upper echelon, like the upper half of the league. And so I think Rogue Dragons should be able to take this one over JCP fairly easily. I can see JCP getting a map or two, but I thought I didn't want to have all my games be a 1-3 or a 3-2. I have 3-3-2s up there right now, so I needed to have at least one that was a 3S. So I decided to go with this one. So yeah, we'll throw it over to you, Acronator. What do you think is going to happen in this one?
I think it depends on how much JCP wants to win, and if they're not demoralized by this point. Obviously, going 0-6 in map differential in the first 2 weeks isn't great for the mentals. But if they have any kind of coaching staff and they're working on the big problems, I think they're going to come into this with a vengeance. I don't know if that's going to be enough against Rogue Dragons, but I do think that going against Rogue Dragons is probably going to feel a little bit like the training weights are off for JCP, having faced the top two teams right now, already behind them. They're going to have probably a little bit of an easier time dealing with and responding to Rogue Dragons. So this might be our first real chance to see what JCP has in them.
All right. What about you, Cesian?
I definitely agree with that. I think that JCP, coming off the week 1 and 2, playing the two undefeated teams right now, it's definitely one of those things where you have to. This is going to be like the proving point for JCP. They have to make a statement this week if they are going to try to say, hey, we're better than this 0-6 scoreline. This is the week where they have to prove that, because they're playing another team that they're 1-1, but both of their this is as close as you get to, based on like the scores. Like, I think Rogue Dragons are as close as you get to a middle of the pack team as you can. Both of their matches went 3-2. They lost to Danger Close Red and won against Crusaders. Obviously, it was a reverse sweep against Crusaders. So definitely Rogue Dragons, they are playing all these teams very close. So I think Rogue Dragons is going to be the real test to try to see where JCP fits into all of this. And we did see signs of life versus, I would say versus Otter Oxide. I think Paradise Tempest, or JCP versus Paradise Tempest, was a little bit more one-sided, but versus Otter Oxide, we did see some maps where they did put up a fight. So I think that this one, I think it might be close. It could go to a map 5. I have it listed as still Rogue Dragons winning, because I think they just there's not as much pressure on Rogue Dragons this week to perform as there is on JCP. JCP is coming in with something to prove, or maybe they'll come in with a mindset of they've got nothing to lose. So it all depends on, I think, how JCP shows up to this match to see if they're going to really put their name back on the table.
Yeah, I do hope they come in not with the mindset of we have nothing to lose, because they do have something to lose, and that is the game.
That's true.
they could definitely lose the game if they come in with that mindset. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I definitely agree. This is kind of a proving grounds for both these teams. If Rogue Dragons, struggles with this game, maybe they are more middle of pack. If they're able to dominate, maybe they are a little bit in that upper half. But we'll have to see how it plays out. Definitely another game people want to keep their eyes on. I think these last two games should be pretty straightforward. I predicted them both to be 3-2 because, again, I am just a very silly man who likes to do silly things with his predictions. But yeah, I think Danger Close Red is going to take it over Volume 0. I think the 3-2 is more of I have a feeling Volume Zero is just going to show up this week and do something surprising. I don't know why. I can just feel it in my gut. My gut's always right, or so they say. So I'm excited for that one. And then, of course, Los Beefers to be versus Phoenix. I think that one could be kind of close. I think both these teams are kind of in that lower half right now. I could be wrong. We've only seen one game from Los Beefers to be, and I believe they had to play Otter Oxide. So maybe I'm underselling them a little bit, but we'll have to see when we get into those matches. So do either of you have anything to add for these two matches?
Very briefly on the most recent match for Volume Zero, I think on map 2 out of the 3, they had like a very brief moment of like actually playing fast and like doing really well, and they looked like they could have made a statement in the series, but then that just kind of like fizzled out on Eichenwald, where they got really close held on second point and kind of lost the series from there 3-0. But if they could bring a little bit of that magic out there and just kind of go into a bit more confidence and oomph to their play, I think they could possibly take a map, but I'm not sure they'd be able to take the series regardless.
All right. Anything from you, Susan?
Yeah, based on the what we've seen from Volume Zero, like you said, playing seems like the pace is very slow. I think it's all there's a lot of pressure on Soft Cat to perform. Definitely one of the names that we saw a lot in the kill feed, even during their loss versus Growlu. I think that they're gonna have to, put up a pretty strong performance here. But I think that generally across the board, Volume Zero just looking like they need to they still need to figure out some team stuff before they can really start getting these wins on the board. So I think DCR, obviously they're 2-0 right now. One of their matches 3-2, another one 3-1. I think it's definitely they're probably like looking to continue to extend their lead. But I think Danger Close Red definitely still too strong of an opponent probably for Volume Zero at the moment. And then Los Beefers, like you said, we've only seen one match, and it was versus Otter Oxide. So honestly, that doesn't really tell us a whole lot, because if you have one match to go off and the person that they've gone against is tied for first, they could fall anywhere underneath that. But I think versus Phoenix, this is another team looking to prove themselves, where they lost 0-3 to Hyperion, but they did take a map off Danger Close Red. So they're not 0-6, but it's still not looking great for them. But I think that we have a little bit more, I have a little bit more faith in Los Beefers, just based on what I saw versus Otter Oxide. And I think that they are going to take it fairly convincingly. I think maybe some of the matches might be close. Some of the maps might be close, but I think ultimately Los Beefers is just going to get the sweep.
Well, all right then. Anyone have any last things they want to add on these preds before we wrap things up here?
On the predictions, I don't think so. I think this is definitely this third week is where we start to really see the standings solidify into kind of like what's kind of going to be the form of where we're going to see like which teams are better, which teams are worse. Like we still have some teams, like we're saying JCP, where their scoreline might not accurately reflect their skill because they have played the two teams tied for first. So it's like this is going to be where we start getting enough data to really place these teams in kind of like a power rankings area, like seeing which teams are truly better than the others and which ones are maybe a little bit inflated right now based on strength of schedule. But yeah, this week's very important for a lot of teams. I definitely think so.
Yeah, no, we're getting into those final weeks of the stage. I guess this is kind of our halfway point for the stage. There should be only 2 more games after this, and then we will get into our stage playoffs. So yeah, we are going to see how that plays out. This is kind of I don't think anyone can clinch. I guess I suppose the winner of Otter Oxide versus Paradise Tempest does clinch. I think for a
Yes,
spot
probably.
in playoffs for sure, because then they have 3 wins and they have. To
I mean, if you're
somehow.
missing playoffs with a 3-1 record, then that would
That'd be
be a
kind
little that would mean that it's very close.
Yeah, a little bit surprising there. But yeah, no, I'm really excited to see how this week plays out. I think that is going to just about wrap it up for us. Acronym, you got any last thoughts?
No. I'm
Nope.
for some close games. That's about it.
I do too. I want to see some very close ones, except in the Team Growlu versus Hyperion game. I'm definitely cheering for Team Growlu. No offense to my Hyperion boys. I do love some of the members of that team, but I have too many friends on Team Growlu. I gotta cheer for them in that department. But yeah, that's gonna wrap things up for us here. Thank you guys so much for coming out and continuing to show support for the Nest and for Owlet. I look forward to seeing you guys all back here again next Thursday with a new panel of guests. And be sure to check out all the games this weekend. Like we just went over, there's a lot of great ones. You're going to want to make sure to see them all. Those will be held right here at Owlet Tournament at the same Twitch link. Some of them will be on other links if we have games at the same time. So be sure to check our Discord server for the locations of those games. But yeah, that'll just about do it. Thank you guys so much for coming out and have a great night.